In today's video, I'm talking to lovely Sarah from Sarah Bridge Tutoring, who's kindly agreed to share her tutoring journey with us from qualified primary school teacher to full-time tutor. If you're new to this channel, my name's Jenna. I'm a qualified teacher now, primary tutor, and I chat to others about their experiences in education. Please make sure to like the video and leave a supportive comment down below for Sarah, and let's get started. Thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
Right, can you tell me then, what is your background in education?
Yes. So, the first kind of experience I had with working with children was actually a volunteering project.
Mhm.
So it was back in, I want to say 2011. I had gone through a big breakup, and kind of had a midlife crisis, but it turned out to be a good one. So I
Oh.
decided to book a teaching English project in Thailand.
Oh, wow.
Went there, yeah, I went there on my own. It was just a 2-week project, but then I just stayed for an extra 2 weeks to travel after and met some really lovely girls. But some of those were teachers. So I felt like I learned a lot from them, even just in those 2 weeks. And I just absolutely loved like working with the kids, getting to be a bit creative and just learning how to teach English as another language. So yeah, as soon as I got back, or pretty much as soon as I got back, I applied to be a teaching assistant in a
Oh.
nursery. So that was
Oh, nursery is a whole different
challenging in
ball game.
itself. Yeah, first time working with young children, very young children. It was actually a 2-year-old room that I got placed in.
All right.
So I learned a lot very quickly. Had to step up a bit. It was a key worker.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, pretty much, I think within 6 months, I'd applied for, to go back to uni. I think I was 26, 27. So I
Okay.
went back to uni, I wasn't old, but it was a little bit later, to do an early years degree, which had been recommended to me by one of my good friends who's now a head teacher.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then had a year out again because I like to have years out. And then did a PGCE, trained to be a teacher, well, qualified as a teacher in 2017. And then, yeah, I was sort of teaching until 2022. Did have one gap due to a bit of a health issue, which I believe stemmed from just always being stressed and completely over
Well, yeah.
myself, to be honest. Yeah, had a break sort of in the middle of that stint. And then in 2022, I decided to leave teaching and pursue tutoring full time. So
Oh,
it's been a bit of a
wow.
journey.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. So,
Yeah.
moving on from that then,
Yeah.
when did you first hear about tutoring?
So it was actually the company Tutorful, that I sort of first
Oh,
started
yeah, I know them.
tutoring. Yeah, so my now husband is a videographer, and I believe he did a little bit of work for them, and he came home talking about them and saying, "Oh, have you considered doing a bit of tuition? I can put you in contact, all this kind of stuff." So I did a little bit of work through them. That was before COVID, so that was kind of like 2018. I only had a couple of students. I couldn't drive at the time, and they were face-to-face
Oh,
bookings.
wow.
So it wasn't really worthwhile. It didn't take off because it just took me so long to get there, and I just wasn't making any money from it. And I was still determined to make teaching work at
Oh,
that.
so were you tutoring while teaching?
Yeah, so it was
Oh,
only a couple
wow.
of students. Yeah, a couple of students that I taught after school. And yeah, just because of the driving situation, that ended pretty quickly. But that was kind of my first experience of tutoring. And then yeah, after COVID, kind of went into it properly.
Oh, that's interesting because a lot of tutors now are purely online, and I'm like online now, but face to face I think is quite interesting because there's a lot to consider from
Yeah,
face to face.
yeah,
So
definitely.
obviously you kind of started it then, but then what made you take the official leap into tutoring then? Was it because of COVID?
Not well, I guess actually thinking about it, maybe it was. I was a workaholic before COVID.
Right.
I always filled every gap that I've got with either work or a project or just something, I've filled every hour with work.
Yeah.
Um, and COVID kind of made me slow down a little bit and appreciate what's important.
Yeah.
Look after my health a little bit. As I mentioned before, I'd basically been diagnosed with a bone disorder.
Oh,
Was in quite a lot of pain at the time, so I was already thinking about leaving teaching. And then yeah, COVID happened, and I decided that actually, yeah, putting my health first, putting my well-being
yeah.
first was really, really important. Putting family first rather than work. So I did stay with it a little while longer, but then I can't remember how I got my first clients, but I'd started tutoring alongside teaching again, but I could drive at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it made it a lot easier. All my clients at that point were face to face. Um, so yeah, I was tutoring alongside teaching for about, I want to say 3 or 4 months. And
Okay.
it was intense because the tutoring picked up quite quickly. I was probably working about 70 to 80 hours a week.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I was really sort of on the verge of burnout, and I had to decide, do I stick with teaching and just give it one last shot, or do I just take the plunge and yeah, go for tutoring? And I did. I took it. I talked to my husband a lot, got his advice, because he's very practical. I'm very driven by my heart, he's driven by his head, so it was good to get advice from someone with a different perspective and a different way
Yeah.
of thinking about things. I had his support, which was really lovely, always kind of what you want, and just decided to go for it properly and pursue it full time.
So at the beginning then, when you decided to do that, go full time, did you decide to stick with the face-to-face element, or did you decide to go online?
At that point, I believe it was still mostly face to face. I was probably mostly face to face for about 6 months, maybe 9 months actually. While I was living in Sheffield, I'm now in Essex. I relocated.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, so yeah, so between January was when I started, January 2022, and September, it was mostly face to face.
Okay.
And it was just jam packed. It was quite tricky to get from house to house, and
Yeah.
obviously you have to really think about your timetable.
Yeah.
Be really selective about the jobs that you can take because they have to be close together.
Yeah.
And there's only so many lessons you can sort of fit into an evening.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't really getting any daytime inquiries at that point. That's only really just started in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that kind of made me think, right, I now need to start thinking about online tuition. And I was definitely getting inspired by other tutors that I was seeing online,
Mm.
thinking, if they can do it, if they're as busy as they say they are, there's definitely work out there, and I need to go for it a bit more.
When I started, and I started like you, face to face, and you would have to like logistically trying to work out, well, that family lived there, da da da. But what I found was with traffic, since lockdown, it was crazy. It was like 20 to 25 minutes sometimes between a
Yeah,
house.
yeah,
And
same.
also, if you forget something at somebody's house, or
Yeah.
or
I
then
left
or
my
they
laptop
forget and you
charger once. That was a bit of a nightmare because I do like to play, or I used to play a lot of online games, even in my face-to-face lessons. And all of
oh.
my plans were on there. And I remember leaving my charger once and thinking, oh,
No, they
nightmare.
don't really talk about that often when you do start out with face to face. There's so much to consider,
Yeah,
and and that I think that's why you do move away, because another element for me was the families were lovely, but
yeah,
safety wise, and winter
yeah,
nights, and you're driving around at night from house to house, and it's not really that safe, to be
yeah. That's
honest.
another way to look at it. And also from an expenses point of view, I was spending a lot of money
Mm.
on resources because I'm a sucker for resources. So constantly buying
Me too.
things.
I've got a box.
Oh, I mean, I've still got loads, but yeah, just constantly buying things. Quite impulsive. I can't help myself. Prizes, spending a fortune on prizes, petrol. So by the time you
Mm.
finish, you're not really making that much money, especially when
No.
you're considering your planning time as well, your travel time.
Yeah.
So that was something I started to think about a little bit more. And again, my husband, because he's quite logistic, he's quite practical, he started to sort of say to me, well, actually, how much are you making per hour? Is it much more than you were making teaching? And I was kind of like, well, probably not. So I need to do something about it.
Because that's a question I always find. I don't know about you, but in the tutoring community, they're like, oh, are you making more than your teaching salary? You're making more. And you feel a bit of pressure to do that.
Yeah.
And it's hard in the beginning because it is a business at the end of the day. And you won't make what your teaching salary is in the first, however, maybe year or so. You won't do that. But
No,
there is
definitely
that weird thing where people ask you about your teaching salary, and because I suppose when you get used to that level of money coming in and then you don't, and a lot of people still feel trapped, they can't leave teaching.
They do. Again, it's nice to look at it from a different perspective, though. I mean, again, it's probably because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, bit of a workaholic. I was doing about 70 hours a week. I was getting into work for 7 a.m. with the cleaners, getting kicked out at
That
6.
was
I actually
me.
got locked. Yeah, I got locked in the school by the caretaker and set the alarms off by accident. Like, I was always the last to leave, and then I'd have my dinner and work until like 11, 12 most
That was
days.
me. So
And again, I worked out that it was way less than minimum wage. So when I thought of it like that, it changed my perspective, and I thought, well, I could be working, I don't know, anywhere where I don't need to have a degree, I don't need to have a PGC, and I'd be making more money overall if I spread out my hours, if I work out my hourly rate. So it kind of then was less scary to leave.
do you think that was your work ethic, or do you think that teaching made you work like that? Because I think I'm a bit of both now. Like I'm a
Yeah,
bit like you, where I'll work however long,
you've
but I
got,
don't know if that's teaching or whether that's me.
yeah. I think a bit of both. There is a lot of pressure, especially because I would have still been considered a new teacher. I think, I've been a teacher for maybe 5 years. I always felt the need to impress. Obviously, well, for anyone who's been a teacher, you get a lot of pressure from above.
Yeah,
And rather than being told the things that you're doing right, you feel like you're constantly being told things that are not good enough.
yeah.
Don't get me wrong, people had it a lot worse than I did, and I did get some good feedback, but because they're so busy, probably, they only have time to actually tell you the things that you're doing wrong. So I think I felt pressured there because I'm a bit of a people pleaser. I felt pressure because I wanted the kids to do well, and I cared about the kids, probably too much, like I cared about each and every one of them and wanted them to do well. And sometimes felt like what we were teaching them and how we were teaching them wasn't right. So sometimes tried to speak up about that, and that never went down well.
Oh.
Yeah, and then but also I think it is partly my personality. I know I said before we started that my brain is constantly at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I even talk fast, like I'm constantly filling, or I used to fill every gap with work. I'm getting better. I'm getting better at switching off, but I think the perfectionist in me and the workaholic in me and the people pleaser in me didn't help the situation.
No, if you like that naturally and then you go into
Yeah,
teaching, it's like heightened. And if you end
definitely.
up in like not the most supportive school where they pick
Yeah,
at everything, it can get worse. It can get
yeah.
so much
It can
worse. And you
bring
have
out
to
those
be like really
qualities. Yeah,
careful.
yeah. You really do have to be careful. You need to learn and be able to say no, which I'm, again, getting better at, but I'm not naturally the best at that.
It's hard because when you're now self-employed, we don't have that permanent wage. So like if you do say no and then you've got like a dry spell,
Yeah.
you are literally left in the lurch.
I know
So it's a
it
bit
is
hard.
scary. It is
Yeah.
scary.
But
But
yeah. So
yeah,
how's your business now then in comparison to how you started off? What
yeah.
can
So
you
it
do
was just
differently?
me. Yeah, it was just me. It was mostly face to face. It was all one to one. So it's changed quite dramatically. So I it's been quite busy and loads of like personal things going on as well, but I forgot to post the fact that actually it was 2 years ago that I set up the business. So
Oh,
2 years
wow.
at the start of February, can't remember a specific date. But yeah, in that time it's changed in that I now have 17 tutors in my team,
Oh, wow,
which
17.
it was never planned. It kind of happened organically through me relocating, and then just sort of grew from there. I'm all online now. Some of my tutors do still offer face-to-face, but I decided, or I gradually shifted to online. Again, that wasn't really a conscious decision. I did want to take on more online, but then eventually I thought, well, I'm getting the inquiries, I'm going to just be online now. Just gave me a bit more family time. And we've now started to do more groups. So although most of my work is still one-to-one, we've got like SATs groups that are online, creative writing groups that are online. And I've now started to work with the home ed community with my home ed club.
Oh, that looks really good. I've seen that on Facebook.
Thank
Is it going
you.
okay?
Thank you. Yeah, so it's mostly all recorded, but they do get little bonuses. Like I go in the Facebook group and I'll do little lives. And I've just today actually emailed them about the potential group classes if they did want a bit of a live option, which
Oh,
some of them
wow.
have shown interest in. So it's really nice to start working with the home ed community. I did try right at the beginning of
Yeah.
my tuition journey, and it didn't really work. But it was also new to me. I'd not researched the home ed community. I didn't know anything about it. Whereas I've been, watching other people like yourself, like Katie's Tutoring, who work with the home ed community and kind of see what you guys do and just feel like I know a lot more about it now, and that I know kind of what I have to offer.
Oh, that's good. When did your daytime start to come in then? I think you might have mentioned it actually.
Not that long ago, to be honest, maybe like 6 months ago.
And is that
So
international then, or?
some of them, yeah. So when I first had daytime tuition work, it was through agencies. And now I'm
Okay.
trying to think of the name of the main one that I used, and I genuinely can't remember. Probably
Okay.
because I can let you know. But I did most work through that, and that was NTP work, is that right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that was online, but it was NTP work, and it was really great. It was great to work for that agency. They gave a good rate. They were really supportive. And daytime hours I had to fill as well. So I was really grateful for those opportunities that they gave me. So that's when my first sort of daytime tuition came in. In terms of direct bookings, yeah, they have mostly been international. Some have been referred to me by other tutors. And then I actually don't know how the others found me. I do post in international groups, so possibly through that, just on Facebook. And then it's only now really that I'm starting to get inquiries from home ed families,
Oh,
possibly because I've been advertising my home ed group,
yeah,
club even.
yeah. And how have you found working with the international students?
It's really, I really enjoy it. So I'm currently teaching a couple of students in China. I've taught
Oh,
students in
yeah.
students in Sweden. So there's not been tons of international students. I've linked up with a company called Osmo English very, very
Oh,
recently. Yeah, so just in the last month, and they've asked me to run a book club based on Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So I've just started doing that. And I've got a creative writing kind of course, I'll call it, like an 8-week course coming up with them later in March. So that's quite interesting. I think they just saw me in a Facebook group posting some classes,
yeah.
like look of the classes, and then yeah, just asked if I would be interested in sort of partnering it with them. So that's been really cool. That's been really fun to do and quite interesting to discover that that's even an option.
Yeah. I think that's the thing now because like you being in a school, I always thought school, that's all there
Yeah,
is, that's all that's on offer. And
yeah,
then like you, I went into tutoring and then I kept thinking, well, I really enjoy this, but how can I make it full time? And like I talked to my
Yeah,
family and they'll be like, it's not possible. It's only after school. So how can you make a full-time living? But there
yeah.
were so many tutors that were like, oh, daytime, daytime. I'm so full in the daytime, international. And it's like,
Wow.
initially, tutoring was very quiet and like very closed in, and you're like it's like you're trying to open
Yeah, yeah,
doors and figure out what people are doing because they can be quite. But I think that comes from teaching because
yeah,
everyone's trying to survive in teaching, and
yeah,
then they keep everything to themselves because they want to survive. And when
yeah,
you come out of teaching, I think you still carry that mindset, whereas actually the tutoring community, which I'll go on to in a bit,
yeah.
um, are very open once you talk to
They
people,
are.
openly share
Yeah,
stuff with
yeah.
you. So, but have you found, because I've found there's different expectations with international students.
Hmm.
Some, like especially Chinese students, their standards are a lot higher in some cases.
Yeah,
Like I work with younger children and they could be working at like year 4 or year 5 level, but they're
yeah.
year 1 in our country.
Yeah, I
So,
have found that myself actually. Sorry, frog in my throat. I told you that would
no,
happen.
it's fine, don't worry.
Yeah, I found that as well. So I teach phonics to a little girl who's 7. She's in Hong Kong, and then my one of my other tutors, Hannah, she teaches her younger brother, who I believe is 5. Um, but I would say they're definitely maybe working above what we would see in a
Mm,
UK school. I mean, the conversational skills as well are just fantastic.
mm,
Um, but I think if I'm generalizing, I think they're a bit firmer with what they're expecting from the sessions. If they're not happy about something, they will
mm,
voice that, which is it's fine because at least you know where you stand, you know what you need to do differently, and it's what
mm,
can be quite helpful. But yeah, it's just about making the most of the session, making sure you're fitting lots into the session and they're getting value for money, really.
mm. I think once you understand, the families that you teach in whatever country, then it's a lot easier. But I think sometimes
Yeah,
you're a bit on a bit of a learning curve
yeah,
because like I'm early years based and that was my
right.
training. And then when I started to work with Chinese children, tried to do early years style, not early years curriculum, obviously, but that style play based,
Yeah,
it was a big no.
yeah.
So, I've had to go quite formal with some children.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
guess it is a bit more formal. That's a good way of putting it, actually.
mm,
They're really, again, from my still quite limited experience, they aren't so bothered about the fun element of it and the playful
no,
element
it's
of
all
it. It's
worksheet and
more, yeah,
written and
yeah.
tests.
And I'm sure it
But
does differ with some families because obviously
yeah,
every family is different, but in general, yeah, I
mm,
would say I've also found the same.
yeah, it's definitely a learning curve. Right.
Yeah.
So, let me just look at this. So, what has surprised you the most about tutoring?
That's my dog barking in the
Oh,
background. Sorry if
nice.
you can hear him. What surprised me? So, a few things. I have to look at my notes here
It's
now. So,
fine, don't worry.
firstly, you've already mentioned it, like how supportive the tutoring community is.
Yeah.
He does this in my lessons as well. Been quiet all day.
That's what I love about tutoring though, because they'll all the children will show you their pets and
Yeah, yeah.
or it's the most random things
Normally
that
my
happen.
dog, yeah, normally he turns into a pig. So at about 6 p.m., he loves to rub his head on the floor and snort. So when I've been recording my home ed club lessons, guaranteed he starts snorting, and I have to apologise in every lesson and say I don't have a piglet in the house. It is a 9-year-old dog. He just likes attention. Sorry, I digress.
It's fine.
So yeah, how supportive the community is, like you said. I think when I first started, I was in the mindset of no one's going to want to share. I'm not going to ask questions. I'm just going to sort of be a bit nosy, look out, see what people are doing, and learn as you go, because that's what I've done. But actually, when I started to put myself out there a bit more, speak to other tutors, ask questions, and when other tutors approach you as well, yeah, they're so lovely.
Yeah.
And I now meet with a bunch of tutors, I think once a month. on a Monday, and they are people who are also running tutoring businesses. And it just gets so much value from it. Like, you see so much advice online, you don't know what to take in. So it's nice to meet once a month with this group and just check in, make sure we're all doing things correctly, share advice, ask questions. And I'm in a different group, which I think you're part of, like a Facebook messaging group, maybe. Don't
Yeah,
know.
you're in the
Loads
one
is
I've
in there.
set up. Yeah, I think
Yeah, I've been
so.
a bit quiet recently, but I'm always sort of looking and taking in what people are popping in, and they're just so lovely, sharing, even clients, even, you know, students that they can't help. And I
Yeah,
never thought that would happen, really.
yeah. It's really surprised me. I had one tutor reach out to me in the very beginning, and now she's like one of my best friends.
Oh,
And but she was so nice to me, so caring.
yeah.
And even now, like, we're really good friends and we meet like once a year.
Oh,
She's
nice.
brilliant. Sarah, she's called.
Yeah.
And then since her, then I've met like loads of other tutors that you'll know, like Ruth and Hannah and all them,
Yeah.
that you'll
Yeah,
see. You
Hannah,
know, you
yeah.
get used to all the faces.
You
And like
do.
like you, I'll chat to them maybe like once a month or something. And it's
Yeah.
just nice because I'm kind of jumping ahead with my question, but anyway,
So,
um it's just nice because when I left tutoring, I like chatting to people. I like that communication. That's what I loved at school. I loved,
yeah.
you know, being with the children, chatting to them. I loved talking to the staff. Like, I used to go with the caretaker and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then to go from that to like four walls, and it's just like your husband or
It can
partner at
be,
home, which is
yeah.
lovely, don't get me wrong, but it's
Yeah, but
really
you,
weird.
yeah, yeah.
It's really weird. So they are really
Definitely.
supportive because,
Yeah, I found that
yeah.
more and more recently. Like, the longer I work from home and the longer I'm just doing online tuition, the more I'm craving
Mm,
other adults to speak to, because I spend my day talking to children, which is lovely, but you do need that adult conversation as well. And again, I've got my husband because he works from home as well,
mm,
but it's nice to obviously speak to other people too.
mm. Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think it's so important that you find your team and that you find people that you
yeah.
can speak to.
So you can just kind of compare notes and be like, is this
Yeah,
right? Have I done
yeah,
the right thing?
definitely.
Um,
I'd also, oh, sorry, go on.
no, carry on.
I'd also written down, so what surprised me is that just how much work is out there. So I
Oh
was
yeah.
thinking, you know, there's not going to be enough for everyone. Saw each other, you know, saw people as competitors in the very beginning. And actually now I'm constantly tagging other people in inquiries that I know I can't do.
Mm,
And I know that they do the same for me. There's so much work out there, so many people looking for tutors. And I don't know if it's because of lockdown, because obviously I didn't try properly before lockdown, but it's
mm.
absolutely crazy how much work there is.
Yeah, home ed now, like I keep getting stuff to my Google, you know, you like Google News,
Yeah,
and the figures for home ed are getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
yeah,
And obviously now with the news that they're increasing um fines, I think, because there's so many kids absent.
right.
Um, is quite telling, really. So the
Yeah,
figures are getting massive for home education. I don't know about international, but international like tutors. They've always liked tutors because they want their children to do really well. But like
yeah,
you say, I think lockdown has pushed a lot of different ways of life, and they're not just
yeah,
thinking
absolutely.
have to sit in a school and learn. There's lots of different options.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
what challenges then have you come across with tutoring from
I
your
think,
perspective?
yeah, there's quite a few things that differ from schools, but I think the two main things, I was thinking about this earlier, the two
Yeah.
main things are learning to say no
Yes.
and setting boundaries. So thinking of it as a business.
Mm,
Um, and again, I think I've said this already, or I said this before, you know, before we started filming, that I'm not naturally good at setting boundaries. I'm not naturally good at saying no, you know, and that's been something I've got better at as I've gone along, and I'm sure I've got lots of room for improvement.
yeah.
Um, so even just making sure that you've got really clear terms and conditions
Yeah.
in regards to payment. So I think in the beginning, I used to allow payments to be made after lessons. That quickly stopped because of issues. I used to do pay as you go, that quickly changed to pay monthly. And again, that was more because this is now my sole income, so I need that monthly income to pay bills.
Yeah.
I did introduce late payment charges in September, I believe it was, because unfortunately, you know, late payments were happening, and I was having to chase. And not only did I not have time, it was quite stressful. It stressed me out. I felt horrible chasing. And also it just unnecessary stress. So I introduced late payment charges, which thankfully I don't need to use very often. And I do still hate using them. And sometimes I'm like, oh, should I get rid of them? But it does encourage people to pay on time. And again, it's thinking of it as a business, especially now that I've got tutors to pay. If people pay me late, I can't pay them on time. So I've got to be much stricter with it. And just setting boundaries in terms of what kind of families you want to work with. And that probably sounds really harsh, but again, the reason I left teaching is for my health and well-being, because I was really struggling, which I think a lot of teachers are in the same boat. So if I'm starting to get stressed about anything, or if I think that, a certain student we're not going to work well, a certain family we're not going to work well together, then it's either then like referring them to a tutor that works for me that I think would be a good fit, referring them to a tutor that I've met and that I think might, you know, be able to help, or just basically saying, I don't think that this is going to work. And it's really hard to say no and to set those boundaries, because I think you said earlier, things can dry up. Like, it comes in waves. Tuition comes in waves.
Yeah.
Especially if it's, you know, it's, I don't know, April where it's a quieter month, maybe because you've got a 2-week month, or summer especially. But I guess it's just about having things in place so that you can say no. So having, I don't know, multiple income streams, or
Those two words.
having maybe some savings, making sure you've
Yeah.
got that savings pot, or just having things in place so that you have got that luxury of saying no. And even down to, I'm still signed up with a supply agency.
Are you?
Yeah, still.
Oh, I
And
was
I haven't
scared out when
been,
I stopped. That was
I haven't
something
done
I was
supply for
really
a
scared
while.
about.
Oh, bless you. I did do some before Christmas though. It's only the odd day, but if things are quite quiet, I know I've got that to fall
Oh,
back
that's
on.
interesting.
So like summer, if you know, if it's like last year, I knew it was going to be quiet. I knew I'd have less money coming in. So in July, I took on more supply than I normally would. And then that covered me through August. And I had a great August, just going around in my husband's camper van in Cornwall and living in Cornwall for the summer, because I knew I could. So it just gives you that luxury then to be able to say no, just having that little backup plan. I never plan to go back to teaching, and I never will. But that just gives me that sort of buffer if I need it.
Yeah. And how was that going back into school? Was it okay?
Do you know what? It was nice. It was nice to chat to other teachers, and also when you're a supply teacher, you get to kind of enjoy teaching again. You
Yeah,
get to do what
I
you
love
want.
teaching again, going back to
Yeah, you get
school.
to do what you want to do, like teaching your way, because there isn't that pressure that's on you as a teacher that's there every week. They just want someone there. So you get to be a bit playful, and you get to be a bit creative and have a bit of fun. So I do actually usually enjoy going into schools and doing a bit of supply, I have to be honest. And sometimes I miss doing that. So if it does dry up, you know, sometimes I'm like, is there any supply? I wouldn't mind doing a day. And it keeps me in schools, it keeps me sort of understanding what's happening in schools. And then I get to know about any big changes that are happening in the curriculum and things like that.
Yeah, because you do need to keep up with that, really.
Yeah, you do.
Because, like, I've been out a couple of years now. I can't remember
Yeah,
the last time I went into school, because I just made a clean cut break from supply and went
yeah,
straight to tutoring. For me, I just needed to step away. And
yeah,
I think I did ask on our group or something, you know, have you left your agencies or whatever? And I found it scary, because that was the last, you know, the last pie, really. And it was me kind
yeah,
of pushing myself to just do tutoring. Um, but I don't know if I could go back. I'm not sure. I
Yeah,
don't think.
that's fair. There are other things, definitely. It's not for everyone. I think for some people it could be quite triggering. I have to say, you know, although my experience in school made, you know, I wanted to leave, I didn't have a traumatic experience like some teachers have. Like I
Yeah,
wasn't bullied, you know, I didn't have this big sort of breakup from school. It was nothing like that. I still appreciate my time in schools. It just wasn't for me. So I'm able to go back because I don't have that. It doesn't trigger me.
mm,
Um, but I know, yeah, for some people it could. So
yeah.
I was with targeted provision as well. So I was doing tuition with them at the
Oh,
start.
okay, I've heard about
Um,
them.
yeah, they were pretty good. Again, it was all face to face though. So that was the only drawback. I was traveling quite a lot for some work, but it can work really well. And again, it's just I always got told just have a couple of income streams if possible.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah,
top working again.
yeah, yeah.
um,
You do need like, but I was saying to another tutor this week, those separate income streams can take a bit of time
yeah,
setting
yeah,
up, like the
definitely.
recordings and the packages, and
Oh yeah.
you
Oh,
see all
that's
these
real.
lovely things, but God, they take so much time
Do.
to
It
get
does
set
take time
up.
to build. I've always got so many ideas and not enough time to put them in place. And it's
Yeah,
just picking one thing and working
sticking
on
with it.
that. And I'm really bad at that. I'm constantly trying to do about 5 things at once. So I'm trying to get better at just picking one thing, focusing on that, getting that going, and then moving into the next.
I
But I think
know.
in terms of multiple income streams, it doesn't have to be stuff that you're doing. It can be like work, still doing a little bit of work for other people. And
Mm,
that hopefully makes people feel less worried about if it does dry up, if it does go quiet, you still got
yeah,
someone coming in.
that backup plan.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you think your teaching background in schools, what did you bring from that to tutoring, do you think?
So firstly, subject knowledge, I wouldn't have a
Yeah.
clue. You know, before teaching, I thought I knew how to teach. I thought I knew what to teach. I didn't have a clue. In fact, in all honesty, and I probably shouldn't fess up to this, but I had to do an extra 3 months with maths because it wasn't my confident
Oh,
subject.
well, I'm not a fan of math.
Um, but you know what? I'm really glad that I did because I had some of my best observations in maths after that. And now I feel like I can really, really break it down for the kids and see it from their perspective and like teach it in different ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, subject knowledge, having those lessons that you've done in the past and those ideas that you've used that you know work well and being able to incorporate them in lessons. So if for example a kid says, "Oh, I love Pokemon," I then straight away think back to a maths lesson, doing like a Pokemon scavenger hunt in a classroom,
Oh,
and then,
that sounds
oh,
really cool.
yeah, well, how can I maybe try and incorporate that somehow? So having like a bank of ideas, and I think most importantly, being able to think on your feet. And I think one of your other tutors that you spoke to said that. So if
What was that? Was that Katie maybe?
if like a child suddenly says, "Oh, I actually struggled with this today," sort of scrap it. I think it was
Oh, it
Katie.
was Zoe.
Or was it? Scrapping your lesson plan and just knowing how to teach that skill.
Yeah.
In my first probably 2 years of teaching, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I had to stick to my plan rigidly, and if anything went off track, I had a panic attack. Whereas now, thankfully, like I know how to teach the skill, so I can just sort of get a blank screen up and just go with it.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
and
that
I think,
is you're
yeah,
learning to trust yourself because in teaching, like nowadays when I read on the posts and stuff, like they have to have their planning up like months in advance or the week
yeah,
before or something, and there's no
mm,
like spontaneity anymore.
no,
And like when I went into, I'm really like you, I did supply, but I'm not carrying it on obviously. But what supply taught me was to be free again,
yeah,
to because I was very lucky to get good reviews on supply. It gave me that love of teaching back because
yeah,
they liked me, they trusted me and let me just run with the lesson plans. And it just gave you that freedom back. And tutoring is the extension of that, because I've said to some of the other tutors, like when I started tutoring, and I'd be like, oh, I've got to teach this topic at this point of the year, and I've got to do this topic at this point of the year. And then I got really stressed, and I was like, hang on a minute, I can't do a whole curriculum in an hour a week for a couple of
I was
months, because
like,
some children don't stay with you the whole year, they stay with you for a
um,
few months or something. So it's kind
yeah,
of learning to be like, either go with what they need or just follow a general kind of pattern, in
yeah,
line with what they're teaching in the curriculum. So
yeah, and just pick out gaps that you see within the lesson and just follow that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Right, so we've only got a couple of questions left. So if you were starting out again as a tutor, what would you do from the get-go?
Ooh, let me have a little look. So, I'd go online sooner. I think
Yes.
that would be a big thing. I would definitely go online sooner. Um, sorry, I'm trying to find my answers for this one because I did have. Oh, here we go. I started off with my rates far too low, and I think that was a confidence thing.
Yes.
Not having enough
Yeah.
self-worth, not thinking people would pay for it, and just not having that confidence. When people used to ask me my rates, I used to shudder and not dare say it.
It's so
Um,
awkward talking about
it's
money.
such a British thing, isn't it, to not want to actually say how much you charge. So I definitely increase my rates quicker, go online sooner, and just have a bit more trust in myself.
Yeah.
Like just I was definitely confident in terms of I just went for it, and I do tend to do that. I'm quite impulsive, but just trusting that it would work out. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, I think they're the main
It's
things.
so scary to go from that secure job,
Yeah,
teaching job, because when I grew up, like teaching was like I've considered a really good job, and when you did teaching, you did it for life, and in some
yeah,
ways that
yeah,
can trap you if you think,
yeah.
oh, I've got to do this forever. And I remember one teacher saying to me, oh, now you'll just live term to term. You'll live 6 weeks to 6 weeks. You'll be
Uh,
constantly counting down to a holiday. And that I felt trapped by that. I was just
yeah,
like, oh, I don't really want that. I don't want my life set out for me. Whereas with tutoring,
no,
it's totally different, because one day is totally different to the next day,
yeah,
which
it is.
I
And
really like.
I really like that. It just suits my personality. I get bored quite easily. So
Yeah.
it's nice to keep things fresh.
Mm.
And also, it's interesting what you said. I think I felt trapped because I'd gone into teaching later in life, not late, but
No,
20,
no.
no,
Just
not
what's
quite,
considered the
late
norm, but
20s.
anyway.
But yeah, when I qualified, I felt that pressure to make it work because I got a lot of stick for going back to uni.
Oh,
People,
really?
yeah, people just wanted me to obviously be able to contribute, um, to have money
Mm.
coming in, to be able to contribute. So to be a skint student again, having to rely on other people for help, I did. I felt like I had to make it work, um, for other people to not get stick from them, and that kept me in teaching probably longer than I should have been.
Mm.
I felt guilty. I felt guilty about leaving. I felt scared to start again for a third time. Um, but I just think life is too short. Health is important.
Yeah.
Tomorrow sounds so dramatic, but you could be run over. You could, anything, you could be diagnosed with anything. That's what I learned, like there's much more serious things, health things going on than what I've got. But it was a real wake-up call. And I just thought, got one life, and you just need to make the most of it, and you need to be happy. And if I'm going to teach every day and I'm spending 12 hours of my day stressed and emotional and pressured, and then coming home and I can't even be bothered to talk to my partner because I'm so tired, that's not
No,
worth it.
no.
So yeah,
One thing from supply that it taught me was that, you can work yourself, like you say, 12 hours a day. And there are many teachers that literally had panic attacks, broke down, ended up in hospital. And the
yeah,
next day, a supply will come in. That's what your job is as a supply is, because the amount of times I went in, and a teacher had just walked out, and they couldn't cope anymore. And that put a lot of things into perspective for me, because when you're in the job, you think it's life or death. And that's what you're made to feel like. But then when I went to supply, I was like, well, hang on a minute, someone will just walk in tomorrow and just fill in your shoes like you were never there. And that's a big shock to the system, that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. If you had one piece of advice for a new tutor, what would it be?
I think, again, this has been said before, but just do it. If you're, just do it. If you're unhappy in what you're doing, if you're even thinking about it, just try it. I say you don't have much to lose. I know it doesn't feel like that at the time, but again, even if you need that security blanket like I needed, like a bit of supply, signing up to supply agencies, signing up to a tutoring agency like Targeted Provision, just so you've got a backup plan if you need it. Not to go into that full time, but just to give you that bit of income if it is quiet to begin with, which it probably is going to be. It takes time to build, but just do it. There is work out there. Being happy, it sounds so cheesy, but being happy, having positive well-being is so important. Being able to spend time with your friends and family is so worth the risk. And you don't know until you try. You really don't.
No, that's the common theme coming out of a lot of the chats I'm doing.
If you're being a teacher, you can be a great tutor. And even if you've not been a teacher, because actually there'll be people watching this who haven't been a teacher, they might have been a TA, they might have done other things. If you've got knowledge about a specific subject, if you're knowledgeable about something, that took a while, then share it, just try it, and just see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. Right, so final question. What are you currently offering, and where can people find you?
So you can find me on Facebook, and my page is just Sarah Bridge Tutoring, nothing fancy. My website is also very bog standard, so sarahbridgetutoring.co.uk. At the moment, we've got a couple of spaces in our SATs groups that are online. We've got some spaces in our online creative writing groups, and some room in the Home Ed Club. They are recorded lessons, but there will be the option of joining someone live. So that's something new that I've just, as I mentioned earlier, just offered. And then we basically help children from age 5 to 16. We're a group of primary and secondary teachers now. We're all qualified teachers. And we can help online and face-to-face just in South Yorkshire at the moment.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. It's absolutely lovely to chat with you. If you liked today's video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see who else I chat to. Thanks for watching.